I'm heading out of Vermont and into New York, and as I do most of the time, take secondary highways, not interstates, because the scenery is better and sometimes there's interesting roadside attractions. Here's a prime example of some of the quirkiness that you get to see when you have your GPS set to out-of-the-way places. I just happened to catch this out of the corner of my eye out in the middle of nowhere in rural New York. Is this a troll bridge? Some of them look like Snow White's dwarves. Or maybe they're hobbits. Oh, they must be garden gnomes. I'm getting mixed messages. This gnome has his middle finger up and a sign that says, "Go away." But on the other side, we have gnomes with a welcome sign. I hope we see a lot more quirkiness like this in the Catskills. Made it to Hudson, New York, named after the explorer Henry Hudson, who was looking for a way to get from Europe to Asia without going around Africa, and he ended up in Maine, and then south onto the river that was named after him. His trip was financed by the Dutch, which is why there are so many Dutch names in this area, like the Catskills, and Dutch people like the Roosevelts, and Dutch stories like Rip Van Winkle. I'm driving up to the Olana house. I found out about it while Googling the area, and it looked interesting. The home of painter Frederick Church. Frederick Church was an accomplished landscape painter in the mid to late 1800s, but his greatest work of art was his home. They feature the work of current artists here, too. I'm happy to report that dogs are allowed on the grounds. Church bought this property for the view of the Hudson River and the Catskill Mountains. It was just a farm at the time. Frederick traveled the world and his paintings depicted the places he visited. And he really loved the architecture of the Middle East, so he built this estate with the dominant Persian theme. Frederick Church worked with an architect to design his dream into reality. The cities that inspired this architecture include Beirut, Jerusalem, and Damascus. Another work by a current artist. This tree covered in leather is an ode to the many hemlock trees that were destroyed in this area for the leather industry. The tree bark was used in the tanning process. Frederick Church could afford to build this masterpiece thanks to his lucrative art career. Landscape painting was all the rage in the 1800s, and the Hudson River School was considered the best landscape painting school in the country. And Frederick Church was the most successful and famous artist from that school. Let's check out the inside. This was not only the Church family residence, it was also Frederick's art studio. This home is full of keepsakes from their travels around the world. The furnishings are magnificent and exotic. Here's a painting of South America by Church. His work is very detailed and the colors conservative and peaceful. Painters from the Hudson School saw nature as being tied in with God and religion, so visually there was a feeling of solemn reverence. Each fireplace in the house is unique. There's a feeling of awe and mystery here. That must have been how the churches felt, visiting those strange and unfamiliar places. After all their traveling, Church and his wife had health issues that kept them home. But at least they had their adventures to look back on. And a lot of interesting mementos to remind them of where they had been. I'd consider that a life well spent. I can see the Catskill Mountains in the distance. I'll be crossing the Rip Van Winkle Bridge to get to the town of Catskill because we'll be spending the night in the Walmart parking lot before we head into the Catskill Mountains, which is also known as the Catskills. I wish I had turned my camera on sooner. Catskill is a cute town with some cool architecture. Here's what I saw. Looks like it'll be a pleasant night at the Catskill Walmart. No signs prohibiting overnight parking. The only noise is this guy's generator, but I'm far enough away that I don't hear it with the window closed. I'm walking my dog before we hit the hay, and I notice I'm not the only weirdo who has just one window in the two back doors of the van. At least I have side windows, though. Anyway, this reminds me of the very many complaints that I've seen on the internet from campers of all kinds. We have this big empty parking lot. But the van comes in and parks right next to the RV, infringing on his personal space. Of course, it could be traveling together, but I see this complaint so often that it's very possible they're not together. It's never happened to me that I recall. I don't think it would bother me, unless they had a loud generator like that RV has. So why that van would even want to listen to that is a mystery. I'm still at the Catskill Walmart, not going anywhere today in the most torrential rainfall ever. I just drove around a little bit looking for an incline because what happened to me one time in rainfall like this was the rain pulled up on my solar panel and then a strong gust of wind blew the water into the back of my air conditioner and into the van. I discovered that parking on an incline keeps the rain from pooling on my solar panel. But visibility is so bad I don't want to keep driving around looking for an incline. It's not very windy though, so I think I'll be okay. And we'll get back on the road tomorrow. The sun's not even up yet, and we're on the road already, and I had to check out this diner. It's a reproduction of the 1940s diners, but I appreciate some of the detail. I seem to be getting more fascinated with architecture in my old age. The original diners look like train cars because they wanted to modernize the look of the lunch wagons. And railroad dining cars had the best food service at the time, which eventually turned into diners that were stationary. Booths with leather seats. I'll be keeping my eye out for a real 1940s diner. We're heading up to Kaaterskill Falls. That little waterfall is an opening act, I guess. We had breakfast in the parking lot of the falls, and the lot was full before 9 a.m. This is why we're early birds. Warning, deaths have occurred. Stay back from the cliff edge. I'm not going near the edge because there's a man with a dog, and my dog will pick a fight. It's supposed to be a better view from the base of the falls. So I guess we'll be going across that bridge and down a mountain. Well, I walked down that rocky trail for about 20 minutes, and it got increasingly treacherous, and I couldn't tell how close I was to the falls. And it kind of freaked me out that the only other people on the trail were young and they looked like professional hikers. I am neither. So we'll view the falls from the platform with the other lame asses. Kaaterskill Falls. That's the mountain I tried to walk down. It wasn't as steep as it looks here, though. There's another section to the falls below this, but I failed to make it down there, so we won't be seeing it. And that's okay. Catskills, here we come.